Allison Green and Jeanette Farrell had been friends and neighbors for many years now. Moving into adjoining houses as strangers, the newlyweds had bonded pretty much instantly and soon became the fastest of friends. 15 years later, they had been through a lot together, the high and low points being the birth of their children and the loss of their husbands. While cancer had taken John Green, an affair with that dirty little slut from the typing pool saw William Farrell expelled from the marital home, dodging a hail of wedding gift crockery as he went. The two children had pretty much grown up together but could not have differed more if they had been hand-picked to create friction on a reality TV show. Anthony Green, born just over 14 years ago, was a short, scrawny, scruffy kid, lazy in and out of school and, while not dumb, wasn't threatening to keep any prospective rocket scientists out of a job in the future. Something of a mischief maker, he got away with murder on account of his good looks. Boys aren't usually referred to as pretty, but he wasn't often, and a certain charm rarely displayed unless it was called on to get him out of a particularly tight spot. Any time he did what he was told at the first time of asking, it was followed by his mother asking what he was after. 9-year-old Angela Farrell, on the other hand, was tall for her age and athletic. Always looking smart, even in casual clothes, she had a real zest about her and worked incredibly hard at everything she tried her hand at. She was also top of her class in every subject and possessed a maturity that had anyone meeting her for the first time thinking that she at least into her early teens. Angela sighed as she began to pack her suitcase. The thought of spending a 2-week vacation under the same roof as that annoying brat from next door filled her with dread. This year I'm going to stand up for myself more, she thought to herself. Thinking back to last year, the first that the two neighboring families had vacationed together, she cringed, recalling just 2 of the assorted tortures she had to endure. Now that she was a year older, the thought of having colored drinks accidentally spilled ruining 2 of her favorite dresses would still be unwelcome, but the prospect of having her skirt lifted and panties exposed still terrified her. Not this year, no way this year. Anyway, I've been doing lots of exercise for the past 10 months, she said out loud whilst trying to decide which of the 4 church dresses laid out on her bed she should pack. I'm probably stronger than him now, and we're pretty much the same size. In that instant, as a smile began to spread over her face, the seeds of a perfect vengeance were sown in her head. If she could work this out properly and enjoy a bit of luck with Allison's reaction, maybe this wouldn't be such a bad 2 weeks after all. Morning came and a rather perky Angela got up, showered, quickly dried her hair, then put on a simple pale pink t-shirt style dress. Virtually skipping downstairs, she greeted Jeanette with a cheery "Morning, Mom," and a hug. "And a good morning to you, sweetheart," came the reply. "You're in much better spirits than you were last night." "Oh well, it's amazing what good night's sleep can do for a girl," Angela said, smiling. Over at the Green household, things were not quite so harmonious. "One thing, I asked you to do one thing. A haircut, that's all. Once a year just before vacation was the deal, but you couldn't even do that for me." "Aw, Mom, we went over this last night." "I told you I was busy." "Busy? I doubt you know the meaning of the word, you lazy little man." Ouch! That hurt. Anthony knew she didn't mean it that way, but she should be more sensitive about using the L word. Over the past few years, he'd seen his friends begin to tower over him while he hardly grew at all, and he didn't like it one bit. He was thick-skinned enough to put up with most things, but height-related insults usually led to him lashing out, as Angela was well aware. Departure time arrived and the 2 luggage-laden families gathered at the back of the Farrells' SUV. "Okay, put your case in the boot, Anthony, then get into the car," said Allison. Anthony, being Anthony, wasn't paying attention and only heard the part of his instructions after his name was mentioned. As Allison went to check he'd strapped himself in properly, Jeanette had her head buried in the back of the car arranging the first of the cases. Angela had to act quickly. Grabbing Anthony's case, she lifted it, much more easily than she had seen him doing, and moved it behind a planter on the driveway. She held her breath, but no one noticed. She could barely contain herself as the door clunked shut and a final look around led the adults to believe that everything was aboard. As they set off, Angela mused over the various scenarios she'd invented to ensure Brat Boy got into so much trouble that his mom would consider any form of punishment, however bizarre, would be suitable. The journey got off to a good start. Traffic was light and they made good progress. The kids were quiet in the back, Angela reading a book and Anthony playing his DS. The women chatted casually about nothing in particular and time passed quickly. Then they hit a snag. Anthony's DS ran out of charge. "Mom, I thought I told you to charge my DS." "Two things, son. First, you do not tell me to do anything. Second, I told you that if you wanted it charged you could do it yourself. Actually, there's a third." "Shut up." Over the course of the next hour he didn't shut up. He whinged, moaned, kicked the back of his mother's seat and finally knocked Angela's book out of her hands. Angela couldn't have scripted it better. Rather than get angry or retaliate, she merely said, "You are such a horrible little boy, Anthony Green." "Don't call me that, you stupid, useless girl," he shouted, throwing out his left arm and catching her on the nose with the back of his hand. He didn't hit her hard and it wasn't very painful, but Angela screamed out in agony as if it had been then turned on the tears. Even better, her nose started bleeding, adding to the drama. Allison pulled over to the side of road and the two women got out to tend to Angela. After having the blood wiped from her face and dress, Angela, between sobs, spilled the beans on what happened. Unsurprisingly, both parents were raging. Had Allison been his mother, Anthony would have been dragged out the car and given a sound beating. Jeanette, however, didn't believe in corporal punishment. She was at her wit's end with the boy, and a mixture of anger and frustration had her crying on her friend's shoulder. "I just don't know what to do with him, Allison. I've never found it easy to get him to do what he's told, but the older he gets the harder it gets." She paused for a few seconds, then said, "Allison, can you take us home, please? It's not fair on you and Angela to have to put up with him and his behavior." Angela was not prepared for this turn of events. Thinking quickly, she rushed over to Jeanette. "No, please don't go home. I've been looking forward to going on holiday with Mom and you for ages." The omission did not go unnoticed by either adult. "I love you, Jeanette. You're like the favorite aunt I've never had. Please, please, don't go home." "Oh, darling, you are so sweet. I wish there were more children like you in the world. Okay, we'll go on. I've been looking forward to spending time with you too, sweetheart." "Oh, Angela, your dress is ruined." She turned to her son. "Don't think you've heard the last of this," she said, glaring at him, "and when we get to the coast you're buying her a new dress out of your allowance." Anthony was not happy at this news, but even he knew better than to say anything at the moment. The next 4 hours passed painfully slowly. No one said a word and Angela went back to her book. She was feeling so pleased with herself, it was a struggle to keep the grin from her face. She felt like a spider that had got a big juicy fly to build a web then wrap itself up in it. Finally they arrived at the beachside villa. Allison tried to lighten the mood by cheerily announcing, "We're here. Okay, campers, let's get the bags out the boot and get ready to party." They all knew what she was doing and tried to play along, but the atmosphere was still a bit frosty by time they had dumped their luggage in the middle of the sitting room. "Shall we?" asked Allison, gesturing towards the heaped luggage. Anthony, for once, was first to move. He knew that the tension was his fault and wanted to escape. He also knew that his mom still had to devise his punishment and hoped it could be put off until she'd properly calmed down. "Mom, is everything out the car?" "Yes." "Why?" Because I can't see my case." "What? Did you put it in the car before we left?" "No. I told you to load it up before you got in the car." "Why the hell didn't you do what you were told?" "I never heard you, Mom." "So you just left it for everyone else to deal with, just like you do with every single thing you ever encounter in life." Anthony couldn't think of anything to say and stood looking at his shoes. His mother was angry and upset again. "What are we going to do? All your new clothes were in that case, and even if I could afford to buy you new ones, I wouldn't when you've got perfectly good ones sitting at home." By now she was sobbing quietly. "Why do you have to spoil everything?" She turned to Allison. "I'll take him home by train in the morning," she said quietly. "I can't keep him here without a change of clothes for 2 weeks." Silence. Angela waited until the awkwardness felt just right. Jeanette? He could borrow some of mine. We're the same size and Mom says I always pack enough clothes to emigrate with. I'm sure I've done the same again." Silence. Jeanette stared at Angela as the words percolated through her brain. Anthony's jaw was on the floor as he waited for his mother to tell this crazy girl where to stick her even crazier suggestion. Silence. "Mom. You can't be listening to this." He was beginning to panic as he saw his mother, a slightly distant expression on her face, looking from himself to Angela then back again several times. Not for the first time, fear caused him to lose the plot and do something he'd regret. "Mom, I am not going to wear some stupid girl's stupid clothes." Whack! Anthony went flying back across the room as his mother finally snapped and her open hand connected with the side of his face. It was the first time she had hit him and he was shocked and even more frightened than before. Jeanette spoke softly but with a menace in her voice that was impossible to mistake. "You will do what I tell you to do. You will wear what I tell you to wear. In fact, for the next 2 weeks you will do what Angela tells you and wear what she tells you to wear. She will be in charge of everything you do. If you are told to go to the beach, that's where you will go. If she wants you to go to shopping with her, that's what you will do. Do you understand? Do you understand?" He could barely get the words out. "Yes, Mom." "Now, Angela, would you mind taking him upstairs and getting him ready?" Jeanette said, a pleasant smile returning to her face. "We're going out for food in about an hour." Angela skipped over to her suitcases, her face beaming. "I'd love to." "Anthony, you can bring that one," she said, pointing. "It's a bit lighter, so think you should be able to manage it." His head hung in shame. Anthony did what he was told. End of part 1. Come on, princess, we don't have all day. "Didn't you hear? We're going out in an hour?" Angela smiled as she saw Anthony's fists clench just that bit harder as he struggled to control his temper. Only his mother's last words echoing in his head stopped him from launching himself at his tormentor. "Make sure I don't have any cause to intervene up there, or you will find yourself asking Angela if you can continue to borrow her clothes when we get home." From the look on her face, she had meant it, and even if she hadn't, he wasn't willing to take the chance. Angela looked towards messy near shoulder-length mop on his head and asked, "What on earth do you put on your hair?" "It's horrible." "Mousse, gel and Brill cream," came the mumbled reply. "Gross." "Why?" "I was going for a kinda grunge, skater boy look and my hair just flops if I don't put all that shit on it." Fair enough. Did you shower this morning? She asked. No, he grunted in reply. Thought not. Well, there's no way you're wearing my clothes over that dirty, smelly body of yours. You'll have to shower. She dug into one of the two smaller travel bags they brought up after the cases, then passed him some plastic bottles, one at a time. Here. Shower gel, shampoo, use this, then rinse, then same again, and conditioner. Comb it evenly through your hair, leave it on for 5 minutes, then rinse. Got that? He didn't reply. Got that, princess? He nodded. Good boy. His face was burning as she laughed and turned away to get the second travel bag. He didn't know how much more of this he could take. Angela looked back to see that he was still standing there. Hurry up, off you go. Oh, I see. You're worried that when you're out the room I'm going to pick out all the nice clothes to keep for myself? Don't fret. I'm not like that. I'll make sure you get your fair share and don't get left with all the boring old pants and shorts and plain t-shirts and stuff. Well? What are you waiting for? When he trudged off to the bathroom, she went into the second bag and pulled out her video camera. Perfect. There was a wardrobe on the window wall, meaning plenty of light going in the right direction and out the way enough not to be noticed. She screwed in the miniature tripod and carefully positioned it on top of the wardrobe to take in the desired spot in the room. Next, it was the digital still camera, which she sat on the window ledge. Great, both the remotes were working fine. Lastly, she plugged her iPod into the docking station, turning it up loud enough to cover any sounds that the cameras might make. After about 15 minutes, Anthony was back, wearing just a towel round his waist and trying not to look at the clothes lying on the bed. Sit there, she said, pointing to a chair she placed in the middle of the room facing the window and, more importantly, the cameras. She had taken most of the time he'd been out of the room deciding what to make him wear and still wasn't sure. Should she throw him in at the deep end with the frilliest, flounciest dress she'd brought, or build things up more gradually so that every day was worse for him than the previous one? In the end, she thought she'd see what he looked like when everything else was done before deciding. Here, she said, holding out a pair of panties. He just stared as if he didn't know what they were. Anthony, take your panties. Still no response. I need that towel to dry your hair properly, so you have the choice of wearing your panties or sitting naked while I sort your hair. His hand moved slowly forward to take them from her. Cute, aren't they? I love pink gingham. Do your normal panties have a bow at the front like these, or the pretty lace trim round the legs? She didn't expect him to reply, and he didn't. Finally they were on, and she took the towel from him. "Aw, don't you look just so sweet? You can sit down again." He seemed quite subdued now as she noticed that tears were starting to form in his eyes. She took a comb and started on his hair. Combing it into a center parting, she was pleased to see that without all that junk in it, his hair was slightly longer than it had seemed, coming just past his shoulders. "Look up and close your eyes, Anthony." Angela held the leg waxing strip she'd taken from her mom's room the night before up to his left eyebrow, then carefully cut it in a loose arch following the line of his brow. Using the first as a template, she then made a mirror image copy. Peeling off the backing, she made sure they were placed in the right position, covering just over half of each brow. She knew how much their removal would hurt and how he'd react, so decided to finish working on his hair before doing so. His hair was combed forward at the front, then snipped into a blunt fringe that sat about an inch above his soon-to-be thinned eyebrows. No hiding place for those brows now, Sonny Jim, she thought. Angela was amazed that Anthony hadn't reacted. Had he really switched off so much that he didn't know he was now sporting a hairdo that would look girly whatever way he tried to wear it? Even when she used her hairdryer, he just sat there. Wow. His now dry hair was gorgeous. Medium blonde with sun-bleached natural highlights, it was as soft and shiny as any hair she had ever seen. Everything was working out so much better than she could have imagined in even her wildest dreams. Angela prepared herself. Anthony's placid state was likely to end any second as she took hold of both wax strips. Rip. What the foo? For an instant he forgot about his situation and reacted like he'd just been attacked. His hands reached out to grab Angela, but she was too quick for him. She grabbed his wrists and pulled him forward over her right leg, sending him sprawling on the floor. In a flash she was on top of him, pinning him to the floor. Her knee came up and caught him flush in the groin, effectively ending his resistance there and then. He was devastated. On top of all the other humiliations he'd endured in the past half hour, he'd now been beaten in fight by a 9-year-old girl. He burst into tears. "Oh, princess, please don't cry," she said with mock concern. It occurred to her that this would be a good time to reinforce how things were going to be from now on, namely that she was the boss. She moved her hand slightly from his wrist to his fingers. Bending them back slightly, she said, "Do you like your new panties, princess?" When he didn't reply, she bent them back a bit further. It started to hurt. "Do you like your new panties, princess?" she said again. "No." She bent them further still. "Yes," he yelped. "Yes, what?" "Yes, I like the panties." "They're not just any panties, Anthony, they're your panties. Any of the other clothes will only be on loan, but you get to keep all the panties, so?" "Yes, I like my panties." "There, that wasn't so hard, was it?" she laughed. "Now tell me, are you a boy or a girl?" He started to struggle, but she easily overpowered him. "Tell me." "I'm a boy," he cried out in a last act of defiance. The pain in his hand became unbearable. I'm a girl," he bawled, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, you are a girl, aren't you? So, tell me, little girl, what's your name?" "Anthony," he managed to get out between sobs. "Emily," she deliberately misheard. What a pretty name for a pretty little girl. Now put it all together, Emily. What? It's simple. "Tell me that you are a pretty little girl called Emily," she said as if it was a perfectly natural request to make of a 14-year-old boy. Utterly defeated, he complied. I'm a pretty little girl called Emily," he sobbed. She got up and stood over the quaking boy. "Yes, you are, aren't you, Emily? Now get off the floor. We're going out in 20 minutes and I've still got to finish your hair and get you dressed." He didn't get up. He hadn't even heard her. He just lay there sobbing uncontrollably. End of part 2. Anthony finally regained control enough to be brought back up to the chair. He just sat there staring into space while Angela brushed his hair again. She knelt down in front of him, studying his face. For all that, in recent years, she had grown to hate him, she had still thought that he was very good-looking. It just hadn't occurred to her until now how feminine his features were. Full, almost pouting lips, small nose, large, hazel eyes with long thick lashes and skin that had plainly never felt the touch of a razor. With his newly thinned and shaped eyebrows, framed by an old-fashioned pageboy haircut, anyone looking at him would see nothing other than a girl. Angela walked over to the bed and the clothing on top. "Emily. Emily." Anthony turned to face her, then blushed. She chuckled as they both realized that he just responded to his new name without being threatened. Come over here. I need to pick out your outfit. He trudged over and stood beside her. He never realized he did it, but he flinched slightly as she then moved directly in front of him. She had to look down slightly to meet his eyes. My goodness, Emily, I thought we were the same height, but you're actually a little shorter than me. Not a problem, I suppose, as long as we keep you in skirts, dresses, or even shorts or crop pants. She paused for a second, then said, I'm in a really good mood today, Emily, not sure why, but I am, so I'm going to be kind to you. I'll let you pick from these two outfits. She held up a simple white t-shirt dress in the same style as the pink one she was wearing and a top and shorts, both in baby pink. What do you want to wear, Emily, pink or white? Anthony looked in horror at the two outfits. What kind of choice was this? There was no way he would wear a dress unless forced, but the thought of being dressed in pink was almost as bad. He reluctantly pointed to the shorts, but Angela wasn't going to let him off that easily. Tell me what you want to wear, princess, or I'll pick out something far prettier than either of these. After a struggle he managed the shorts, barely above a whisper. That's not what I asked, is it, EMS? I'll give you a clue. The two most important words in your reply will be want and the color. So try again. She put the 3 items of clothing back on the bed and picked up one of her church dresses by way of emphasizing her earlier threat of a prettier outfit. Again choking back tears he managed, I want to wear the pink. I knew it, she shrieked enthusiastically. I just knew you were the kind of boy who'd always choose pink over white if given a choice, especially when the shade is a perfect match for your panties. Before he had a chance to make any kind of response, she told him to get dressed as quickly as they were running out of time. When Angela handed him the top, and he wondered if he should have chosen the dress. At least it was really plain, and he could have, just about, pretended to himself that it was a long t-shirt. The pink top, on the other hand, while not being overly fancy, was definitely feminine in style. The neckline was wider and deeper than anything he'd ever worn, and the short sleeves were gathered at the shoulders and cuffs, giving them that puff look that girls seem to like so much. Once he had put it on, he realized that the front was smocked, fitting perfectly from the collar to his shoulders to his underarms, where it flared out to the hem which sat just below his waist. As he took the shorts from Angela and put them on, he realized that the zip and button fastened at the side, not the front as he had assumed. Even worse, they were so flared, having 3 deep pleats on each leg opening, that they sat like a particularly short skirt unless he pulled them straight out to the sides. He suffered the final insult to his boyhood when Angela took the 2 strips of cloth hanging from the front waistband, about an inch wide and a foot long, and fashioned them into a perfect, pretty bow. Anthony looked down, struggling to accept that he was wearing such girlish clothing. He was only vaguely aware of Angela strapping his feet into a pair of beach sandals, pink of course, and saying that they were ready to go out once she had changed. He was only disturbed out of his trance when she said, "Right, Emily, time to have a look at yourself." Looking up, he saw his smiling tormentor wearing a plain white t-shirt, denim shorts, and white canvas sneakers. She had piled her hair onto the top of her head and hidden it under a skip cap. She didn't look like a boy, but she certainly looked a hell of a lot more boyish than he did at the moment. Anthony tried to ask Angela if they could swap clothes, but he was too upset to speak. He was terrified at the thought of going out in public dressed as he was. In his mind's eye, he looked like a boy. He was a boy, so when he looked in the mirror he saw himself and therefore saw a boy. It never once occurred to him he looked even a little bit girlish, even if most people saw him as more than that. He was absolutely sure that he would be seen as a boy in dress, but as he was almost dragged in front of the full-length mirror, he was confronted by an image that left him stunned into disbelief. He looked like a girl. Even he had to admit that now. His thoughts were all over the place as he tried to make sense of what he saw. "Well? What do you think, princess?" "I look like a girl," he whispered, not realizing he'd said it out loud. "Yes, and a very pretty one at that. You know, I'm beginning to think you really are a girl pretending to be a boy. No real boy could look as pretty as you, and no real boy, even a tiny wimp like you, would let himself be beaten up by a girl just over 4 years younger than him. Oh, and I doubt any real boy would let himself be dressed all in pink, especially those shorts. I just bet you knew they were designed to look like a skirt, didn't you? Come on, girlie, let's go downstairs and show you off to our parents. I bet your mom's just dying to meet her new daughter. We're due to leave in a minute or two anyway." As she pushed him out the room, she paused for a second to stop the video camera and grab a few items from the top of her dresser. She was having so much fun, and this was just the beginning. End of part 3. While the girls were getting ready, Jeanette had to use all her powers of persuasion, convincing Allison that she'd picked an appropriate punishment and that she shouldn't just take Anthony home in the morning. She did want to help her friend, but was also aware that her daughter had put up with a lot of crap from that brat over the years, and she was ecstatic at the prospect of her gaining such a sweet revenge. The last thing she wanted was to see Anthony getting let off the hook yet again. Their conversation was long and involved, so suffice to say that by the end Allison had been convinced to give it a couple of days to see how things worked out before deciding anything. Hearing footsteps on the stairs, Allison's heart skipped a beat. She always wished she'd had a daughter and always felt a little jealous seeing mothers clothes shopping or styling their girls' hair or helping them with their makeup. For the first time since this situation started to unfold, she actually felt excited. Angela appeared first, wearing a grin that would put a Cheshire cat to shame. "Come on, Cupcake, don't keep your mommy waiting. I'm sure she can't wait to see how her little princess looks." Skipping gleefully down the remaining stairs, she moved to the side so that she could see everyone's reaction when Emily made her public debut. Anthony was embarrassed beyond belief. Stepping slowly with a hesitancy that added to his false femininity, nervously fingering the hem of his top, looking at his feet so as not to catch anyone's eye, his descent began. Seeing her son's transformation, Allison's jaw dropped, her hand moving to cover her mouth in an almost stereotypical gesture of surprise. She couldn't believe that this beautiful little girl could really be the son who had given her so much grief over the last few years. Her eyes began to fill up, but this time they were tears of joy, not a mixture of anger and despair. "Anthony, you're beautiful." If Anthony had looked into his mother's eyes, he'd have been very scared. He'd have seen the look of a woman who's something she liked and may not be willing to give up without a fight. "Wow, Angela, I know who I'm going to the next time I need a makeover," said Jeanette. Everyone laughed. Well, almost everyone. After locking up, Allison insisted for the first time in years in taking her son's hand. Normally he'd have pulled away, but in his current predicament he was grateful for the relative security of his mother's firm grasp. They meandered along the beach road looking for somewhere to eat. It didn't take long as they found a nice-looking diner attached to a shop that sold all kinds of beach stuff and general seaside tat. Greeted by a pleasant, slightly plump woman in her mid-40s, they took a table by the window. Anthony would have preferred a corner or, even better, a cupboard, but he had no say in the matter. The woman gave them a few minutes to survey the menu before coming over with a notepad and pen. "Good evening, ladies. I'm Joan and I'll be your waitress for the evening. Actually, I'll also be your cook, dishwasher, and shopkeeper. That's the trouble with running a place like this early in the season. You have to do everything yourself. In fact, if you want to complain to the manager about the service, that'll be me too," she added with a smile. "So, are you ready to order?" Having taken the adults' orders, she turned to the kids. What sweet children. You know, you two remind me of me and my best friend when I was your age. Turning to Angela, I was a bit of a tomboy like you, but my friend Millie was, looking towards Anthony now, a real girly girl. Everything was pink. Neither of us was as pretty as you two, mind you. By now Anthony's face was the same color as the tomato ketchup he was fiddling with. What's your names, girls? I'm Angela, and to be honest, I'm not really a tomboy. I just threw these on in a hurry as, she laughed, gesturing towards Anthony, and rolled her eyes. This one took forever deciding what to wear. Joan laughed too. Yep, she's definitely a Millie, she said with faux exasperation. What do they call you then, Millie too? Anthony didn't know what to say. He couldn't tell her his name was Anthony. He hated the thought of being mistaken for a girl, but if she knew he was a boy looking like he did would be 10 times worse. I'm A. Suddenly his earlier humiliation flashed into his brain. Emily. Angela nearly exploded, partly because he had to tell a complete stranger that his name is Emily. Could this holiday get any better, and because of the expressions on the parents' faces. It was that say what expression that people have the first time they see the Jerry Springer show. Emily, said Joan wistfully, that's what I would have called my daughter if I had one. 3 boys though. Big and butch, all man. Wouldn't have suited Emily, for sure. It's the perfect name for a pretty little thing like you though, she winked. Angela couldn't help but chime in, yeah, Emily is about as far from butch as you can get. You should see her trying to play with the boys. They put up with her because she's so pretty and they like it when she flirts, but anything more strenuous than dressing a Barbie and she's exhausted. They were all laughing now, all except Anthony, of course. Joan attributed his obvious embarrassment to the flirting comment. Joan finished taking the order, then headed off to the kitchen. So, Emily is it? Said Jeanette, loving this holiday almost as much as her daughter. Joan's right, it does suit you. Strange that you picked one of the most girly names ever though. I'm surprised that you didn't go for, maybe, Tony. At least something that sounds a bit boyish. I think you must be enjoying this more than you're letting on. I've never known a boy to have a girl name ready in case of emergencies. What do you think, Allison? Is he a boy or is she a girl? Allison just smiled, put her hands together like she was praying, and looked to the heavens. At that point Joan reappeared. Here you go, girls. I always like to give my customers something to remember this place by. She held 2 silver necklaces with fancy writing, one saying Angela, the other Emily. Oh, Joan, thank you so much. This is lovely. Can I wear it now? Sure you can, sweetheart. Go ahead, came the reply. It took a subtle kick from his mom to get Anthony to respond in a similar manner, although even then thanks Joan was his best effort. Angela helped him with the unfamiliar clasp, taking great pleasure in doing so. Within minutes they were all tucking into 4 surprisingly good meals. Even Anthony, who was feeling sick to the pit of his stomach, managed to pretty much clear his plate. They thanked Joan, complimenting the chef, and headed back to the villa. They were all tired after traveling and a day of varying trauma, so a quiet night suited everyone. Okay, girls, get your PJs on, then Angela can pick a DVD, said Jeanette. Anthony looked towards Allison while trying to ignore the girl's comment. Mom, I don't have any PJs. Well, I'm sure if you ask Angela nicely she'll lend you a pair. The word stuck in his throat as he felt the tears building up again, but he did manage to ask. Angela, could I borrow a pair of your pajamas, please? Of course you can, Emily. Anything for my favorite holiday sister. Give me 5 minutes to get changed, then come up to my room. Make sure you knock before coming in. He wanted to punch that smug smile right off her face, but even given the opportunity, namely no parents around, he was now afraid to try. She had beaten him pretty easily earlier, and they both now knew that she was stronger than him. Oh, the shame. It would have been bad enough losing a fight to a girl if she was the same age, but Angela was just over 4 years younger. Not for the first time he cursed his small stature and puny build. Up in her room, Angela quickly got changed into her least favorite PJs, gray, plain t-shirt, top and shorts. She hated them, but at least they were comfy, and plain was part of the plan. Next she prepared the cameras, switching off the flash. Popping her head out of the bedroom door, shouted Emily. Emily. You can come up now. As he walked up the stairs, he was looking forward to removing his current outfit, but doubted if its replacement would be much better. He was right. He sighed out loud as waiting for him on Angela's bed was a pair of PJs with a cartoon Stephanie from Lazy Town on the front. The main body and sleeves and were cream with a 2-inch pale pink ruffle round the neck, hem and at the end of the 3/4 length sleeves. The bottoms stopped mid-calf and were the same color as the ruffles. His mother had that look again as they entered the sitting room. That worrying look that said, "I prefer you as a girl." They all huddled together on the sofa to watch Hannah Montana the movie, but an exhausted Anthony was fast asleep before it was even halfway through. Allison carried him up to bed, tucked him in and kissed him gently on the forehead, whispering, "Good night, Emily. You've been such a good little girl since you started wearing pink. See you in the morning, princess."